What is up, guys? It is Styx here. I did say I was going to be doing a bit less Destiny 2 content, but I figured I'd do a few build ideas, given that the Destiny 2 PvP sandbox is changing, as well as Guardian Games coming around, showing you guys the kinds of builds I use as someone who's played the game for a very long time at this point. Starting off, I'm going to be going into my PvP and PvE hunter builds that I've been running a lot as of recent. So the main focus on the PvP side of it is I like to use weapons that make me very self-sufficient. I'm able to act alone, but I'm also able to act in a team in game modes like Trials and Comp and sixes of like Iron Banner, Control, Clash, that kind of thing. So starting off with what is probably what most people are coming for, the subclass abilities. I run Arc Hunter as of recent, and when I run Arc Hunter, I like to use the Arc Staff. I don't think Gathering Storm is very good in PvP. I use Gambler's Dodge because I rely a lot on the melee. I like to use Strafe Jump, give me more directional control. I use Disorienting Blow. It blinds enemies and amplifies you. I use the Storm Grenade. This is really good with catching people with a lot of damage by surprise. And sometimes you hit it on someone who can't run out of cover because they're either one-shot or it puts them in a really bad position. You can finish them off. So it's a lose-lose for them. The aspects I like to use are Tempest Strike. This, if I can get it off, can almost one-shot someone and jolts them. Very useful, very good way to use your melee aside from the standard Disorienting Blow. And Lethal Current, where after dodging, your next melee attack is increased lunge range, jolts the target, and creates a damaging aftershock. You can see some flow state usage because of the ability recharge, the resilience while dodging, and your reload speed being greatly increased. Totally understandable, I just personally don't use it very much. The fragments I like to use are Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace. I like to, with this setup, use primarily Arc Special Weapons and Arc Heavy Weapons. That way I can keep getting Ionic Traces, especially with the new PvP sandbox. This will be very good, because you will get more abilities than a lot of other people will be getting. Spark of Feedback, I like to run this for two reasons. The melee damage increase is really nice for if someone melees me, I melee them back. They take a lot more damage than they would normally, but I also like it for the plus 10 resilience because my stats only allow me to hit 20 while I'm maintaining a high mobility, high recovery, and high secondary stats. So I like to use this to balance out my stats a bit, make me more survivable, because you typically want to be at about 3 resilience or higher for a hunter. I enjoy Spark of Haste. Once again, this grants you more resilience, recovery, and mobility while you are sprinting. This increases that sort of idea of the ability cooldown, as well as it's just a nice thing. You're going to be sprinting a lot. Another thing I could see people running would be Lingering Arc Grenades have an extended duration. Spark of Recharge, while critically wounded, your melee and grenade energy regenerate more quickly. This could work pretty well in certain slower game modes like Trials, where you might get one shot, retreat behind cover, and they don't have a lot of reason to push you. And then here, it's another one where I like to have that extra 10 recovery. Finishers don't do anything in this mode, but once again, you could run Spark of Recharge with Spark of Haste. You could run it with Spark of Momentum if that is something that you personally enjoy. Now, moving on to the next part of the information for this. On Arc Hunter, and to be honest, on Hunter and PvP in general, you are mostly going to be looking at your standard all-rounder, can be used on everything, utility-based exotics. For example, your Stompies, your Frosties, your Wormhusk. These are going to be very popular in the current climate and the current sandbox. I would say especially Frosties, because Frosties, when you are sprinting, give you ability energy. On top of that, dodging speeds up your sprint. It's a bit more mobility all around. I'm able to put on Frosties while maintaining 100 mobility, 100 recovery, and 30 resilience. I recommend sort of trying to stay around this stat mark. If you need to sacrifice a bit of recovery to keep at that tier 3 resilience, that's totally fine. But you ideally want to be somewhere in this level, or if you really don't like getting flinched, I would recommend sacrificing recovery for resilience. But keep in mind, you will be regenerating slower. Secondary stat-wise, I do recommend, depending on your personal preference, sticking with discipline or intellect, because you are going to be able to dodge for your melee a lot of the time. And so if you are putting a lot of points into strength, you're not really going to be making use of that shorter cooldown, so they're a bit wasted. But with intellect and discipline, those decrease the cooldown of your super and grenade respectively. I would say overall discipline is slightly more useful. My personal build mostly allows for a high intellect, so I just keep that. As far as your weapons go, I am personally going to be running Traveler's Chosen on this setup. If you do have the Catalyst, it's a way better thing to run as well, because it gives you a lot of boosted stats and allows Traveler's Chosen's damage type to become Arc, which further feeds into the feedback loop of that ability energy on kills with your weapons, because you get the Ionic Trace. However, even without that, Traveler's Chosen's exotic ability is really nice for regenerating your personal abilities, and it's a really nicely handling weapon, and it's relatively forgiving as well. With this, I like to run a special arc weapon. These include the Occluded Finality sniper rifle, which you can get from Iron Banner, the arc fusion rifle main ingredient, which you can get from Zur or from Banshee, depending on what they have in their rotation, and the A Sudden Death arc shotgun, which is obtained from Prophecy. If you have this shotgun, I do recommend running it with Elemental Capacitor, as this will boost the handling a fair bit, and on an aggressive frame shotgun who can no longer run quick draw, that can be very useful. Heavy weapon, I'm personally running Half-Truths with Eager Edge because I find that fun and nice to play with, but if you're really wanting to be min-maxing about your weapons, I would recommend an Arc GL. My PvE setup on this specific class is going to be a bit of an interesting setup where I like to be able to play solo, but I also like to be able to work well in group play for GMs, for raids, for that kind of content. And to be survivable, I like to, on my hunter, play a bit of a medic kind of role. I like to make use of the class's great mobility and ability to proc invisibility, which can allow me to get off some pretty cheeky reses and revives whenever there are issues. And for this, I personally like to run the Gunslinger. Now, the specific abilities for Gunslinger, I choose Marksman Golden Gun. It is almost always the better option. I can think of very rare times with Blade Rush, especially with Celestial Nighthawk being boosted, because even if, for example, this primary build is going to run Assassin's Cowl to proc that invisibility with the melee, but I can quick swap to Celestial Nighthawk to get off my super when I need it. So that gives me a lot of freedom to use the super in a really powerful way, and with the Celestial Nighthawk buff, it still does a lot of damage even after the slight nerf that followed it. I like to run Gambler's Dodge, keep my melee up, triple jump, extra general mobility, and helps with parkour. I like to use the knife trick because I just find it to be more consistent and just better to get kills, which is needed to proc Assassin's Cowl. I use the healing grenade. Healing can be immensely useful on you, on allies, just in general. It's oftentimes going to be more useful than your standard damaging grenade. There is, I believe, a fragment if you would like to use that when you get kills with a solar grenade, it cures you, but that only works on you. It doesn't work on your allies. I like to use the aspects knock them down. While you are radiant, your final blows with your throwing knife will fully refund your melee energy, which is really nice for this build because you're going to be wanting to use that relatively frequently. As well as on your mark, precision final blows give you and your nearby allies increased weapon handling and reload speed. This can be really nice during a DPS phase on a boss in any kind of mode. This will allow you to reload faster. It stacks up to 3 times, and whenever you use your class ability, you immediately get maximum stacks upon your mark. The fragments I like to use personally are Ember of Singeing. Class ability recharges faster whenever I scorch targets. It's always great. Ember of Charm. Solar Ignition spreads Scorch to affected targets. I like this for the discipline boost and for the effect. Ember of the Empyrean. Your solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. That is almost required, just in the sense of it's a really powerful ability that it gives a large increase to a lot of those time-constrained abilities. Ember of Solace, radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. And Ember of Torches, powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant, which Ember of Torches works really well with Knock 'em Down because Ember of Torches makes you radiant, and then Knock 'em Down gives you your melee back, and you can continue to chain those abilities. As far as the exotic goes, like I said earlier, Assassin's Cowl, which I will occasionally swap with Celestial Nighthawk. I've seen some level of argument if you're specifically going for damage to go with Star Eater Scales, but I think it's a lot more inconsistent. As far as my overall armor setup goes, my stats, I try to max out my resilience for the damage reduction, and then I focus on mobility. If you can keep both of those at 100 with the setup, I 100% recommend doing it. I just don't have a lot of great resilience armor on my hunter. I've not gotten very lucky even with the ghost mod. I hope you all have gotten better luck. As far as the other abilities, once again, I recommend a lower strength, higher discipline, or higher intellect. You probably want to edge out with discipline. It'll give you more survivability. You'll be able to spam your healing nade. Now, with your armor mods, I would recommend on your helmet, you run ammo finders and a harmonic siphon. I'm going to be using solar weapons with this, so that is what I'm personally going to be going with. If you are not using those, change the siphon accordingly, as well as any other mods you need. On my arms, I will be running heavy-handed. My powered melee final blows give orbs of power. This is great for just continuously cycling your abilities. Impact induction, once again, great for cycling your abilities. Whenever you deal damage with a melee, you reduce your grenade cooldown. I like to run melee and concussive dampener as far as my damage resistances, as well as a harmonic resistance. I do recommend this. However, in certain game modes, I would recommend swapping melee or concussive dampener for sniper. It entirely depends on the encounter, but this is a good overall one that I find very useful for me because I will be dodging around enemies a lot, so I get meleeed a lot. Now, as far as the leg goes, I recommend solar weapon surge. This is because I will be using my solar weapons, which will give me a bonus to damage. If you are using another weapon type, I recommend using another surge. For my cloak, I use time dilation to let my armor charges last longer, and distribution, so whenever I dodge near targets, because I'm going to be near targets, it reduces all ability cooldowns. I have also seen people use powerful attraction, where whenever they dodge, it collects all the nearby orbs of power. If that is something you personally like to use, 100% use that, but I just don't personally. Now, as far as my weapons go, I like to run the Succession Sniper Rifle, Sunshot, and a Solar Rocket Launcher. I personally am using an Overflow Vorpal weapon, Hezen Vengeance, but if you have other options you would like to use, for example, if you have Ascendancy, if you want to use the Lament, and then run something like Zaouli's Bane, then that is also entirely fine. The main thing is I'm running full solar. Now, for the Sniper Rifle, if you want to also run Zaouli's Bane and Izanagi's Burden for more sniper rifle damage, that's also totally fine. And finally, I would say that for your artifact stuff, weapons, it's based on what you use. Obviously, I would 100% say pick up the Overload rocket launchers. In addition to that, the Heart of the Flame artifact perk, which when casting your solar super grants nearby allies radiant and increases the damage of your super, can be really useful in group scenarios for your Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun. Torch, while radiant, deal increased weapon damage to combatants who are affected by strand and stasis, and Flint Striker, rapid solar weapon precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows will give you radiant, just keeps your radiant up constantly. In addition to that, while your super is nearly fully charged, ability final blows spawn orbs of power wished into being. That can be really nice as well. And I would say, to be completely honest, aside from the Revitalizing Blast, which is solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration, and the Overload rocket launchers, you don't really want anything else in this second to last column, so definitely take a third option in the middle column. And then in this final column, I would say an almost necessary one if you are doing any solo content is Solo Operative. If you're not doing solo content, it can still be good to just have on if you don't like changing them very frequently, but I like using Argent Ordnance, which will work well with this armor charge build, which will let you do more damage and have a faster reload speed. In addition to that, Rays of Precision can be nice with this build, just by virtue of it being a solar build, and solar precision final blows causing combatants to ignite can be nice for some chain damage. I hope you guys have enjoyed the general build ideas. I hope you make a lot of use of them in the Guardian games for all of the content you might be doing to get your medals done. I know they added diamond medals this time around, so let's get this done. on, and for whatever class you are, I'm going to be releasing 2 more for Warlock and Titan. I play all 3 relatively consistently, so I will be going in and giving these build ideas. I hope you guys enjoy the videos. Drop a like, comment, and subscribe for more.